So I was going to start this off with kind of a light mocking impression like I did with the American Women video. But looking back, I kind of found that to be a bit harsh and mean. So I'm going to veer dangerously close to the territory of cringe and try to just kind of speak openly and honestly, you know? I want to speak directly to all the men who clicked on this video. And I want to say that if you have felt marginalized for the past few years, if you have felt like the world has simultaneously shoved you to the fringes of society and yet simultaneously has told you that you shouldn't complain because you ruled the world or something, you're not crazy. It's not just you. It's happening to all of us. It's not your fault. It's not you. That is the thing that if I can impart that and I can help you to just walk away from this just knowing that, I'll consider this video a success. Yes, the world lies to you. Yes, the world is pushing you to the fringes of society. But hopefully by being here and by making a good faith effort to try to understand the social dynamics and trends that have led us to this moment, I hope, and I hope that you hope too, we can start to overcome that. So with that in mind, I am Richard, the channel is called New Memphis, and I am so glad that you could be here today. I'm especially glad that this beer could be here today because this is not a fun subject. All right, let's dig in. The American dream, as told by immigrants, is to arrive in America, work hard, and trade their labor in exchange for a better life for their kids. The American dream, as told by American men, is to be born poor right here in America, become a millionaire by 40, a billionaire by 45, and by 50 you'll go back and wave your cash at your high school reunion in front of that girl who got pregnant and is now raising a family of beautiful children. What a sad life that must be. A woman having children. It's a flawed but surprisingly old fantasy that American men have held on to for, like, seriously, a very long time. The idea of getting that thing that you feel you missed out on, getting a hold of that thing you think that you were robbed of and just focusing on it. And if you don't believe me about like how old that fixation is, then clearly you weren't paying attention when you should have been reading The Great Gatsby in high school. Cautionary tale, gentlemen. Cautionary tale. American men have always defined themselves by what they lack rather than what they have, by what they cannot do rather than what they can do. And scam artists really like to needle that and use it against you, by the way, so be aware of it. And there's no special reason for it. The truth is it just comes with the territory of living in a hyper-competitive, consumer-driven society. But is that a bad thing? Is it bad that men live in a society that tells them from the day they're born to go out and strive and build wealth and status? That brings us to the reason why this script took so long, because it's just really difficult to articulate. Telling the fairer sex to prioritize money and status over family is a recipe for being unhappy at 40. But for men, that's not really the case. So if we live in a society that prioritizes that, a society that tells men to do what they will probably look back on and be at least somewhat happy with, then why are we all unhappy? What I think afflicts American men are two things: spiritual impotence and a lack of good masculine role models, both of which have been caused by men being forced into the periphery. And that forceful shove happens in two ways. First, of course, is being locked in our homes, because every third place in America was bulldozed to build parking lots so we can drive to places that are no longer worth going to because there's nothing but parking lots. Women do also deal with that issue, and honestly, we should all be speaking a lot more broadly and a lot more often about America's loneliness-inducing urban design. That's going to be a different video. The second reason is exclusive to men. That one is in person and online, where men's voices are repeatedly shouted down in favor of more liberal ideas. I wish I could come up with an idea with a word for it that wasn't so political, but I really can't. However, what I do want you to really take away from this is that the reason why men's voices are shouted down and the reason why it's allowed online is not for the reason you're probably thinking. It is very easy to fall down a rabbit hole and say that men are pushed out because, you know, because of some conspiracy, because of some grand plan to destroy men and masculinity as a concept. But the truth is just really, really simple and boring, as the truth often is. The current model of the internet is advertiser driven. And as r/male living space will corroborate, men are just a less profitable demographic. And in a free market, consumer-driven society, influence is going to go to whoever's willing to rack up more credit card debt. That's the banal truth of why our opinions and things that are for us get shunted. We don't spend enough money to justify building spaces for us. It doesn't have to be a bad thing, though. I mean, personally, I kind of take it as a compliment that, social media platforms deprioritize me and people who look like me and also my personal values because they're not profitable enough and because I don't do enough impulse shopping. Even if it could destroy society. Men might be 50% of the population, but that doesn't mean that the beauty, health, fast fashion, useless knickknack, or elective surgery industries would be 50% smaller without men. That's who's doing most of the advertising on TikTok. That's the boring, banal reason why men's voices are suppressed online, which then carries over into the real world as people bring the attitudes of TikTok into real life. That's why men's gathering spaces online are increasingly pushed to the fringes. It's why a lot of content that's made exclusively for men feels cheap. And it's also why prominent male... I just can't talk anymore, too much beer. It's why prominent male role models get attacked, despite the fact that a lot of the things they do, if they were women, would not be a big deal. Like, didn't JoJo Siwa wrap herself in tinfoil and hump a girl with her legs open like a couple of days ago? And apparently we still like her. The free market prioritizes the demographic that's more willing to drop thousands of dollars on Barbie merch or order an entire new wardrobe from Temu on a whim. That means prioritizing single, childless women. And making more of them if possible. But as the late, great Alexei Navalny identified in his home country, if you allow a demographic to just sit off on the fringes because it's easier than actually talking to them, they will just concentrate and radicalize. And that is exactly what is happening to American men right now. So how do we stop it? Well, let's go back to spiritual impotence. Go to church. Take up philosophy, join a charity, volunteer in your community, sacrifice your time, energy, and wealth to something that is bigger than you. Men, in mind and body, were made for productivity. It is what we're put on this earth for. Women make communities, women make families, men build. They build houses, roads, cities, infrastructure, and institutions. That is what men do. So take your ass outside and work. It's going to be hard. I'm not going to lie to you. It'll be hard. But when you find something that is worth the effort, when you find something that is worth doing hard work and you devote yourself to it, there is a clarity that comes with that. As a man, there is a clarity that comes from being able to lie in your bed at the end of a hard day of work and say, I did something that mattered. I did something that was bigger than just me. It's not necessarily religious, but again, spiritual. It's the sacrifice of yourself for something greater. The understanding of that. You're not just trying to build personal wealth. That is something that is just missing from our society, from this capitalist hellscape that we're subject to. But we can change that if we try and we care a whole awful lot. As for having better role models, that's a little more tricky. I'm gonna make an entire video on how one particular asshole with a Bugatti became the biggest male role model on the internet. But if you want some suggestions right now, I have a couple. Great Gatsby always exists as a good cautionary tale if you wanna know why obsessing over that girl who rejected you in high school is a bad idea. Another classic, Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. It is a book that is all about humility and the work that men do. It is a classic for a reason. I read the Gregory Hayes translation. I think the worst way you could possibly approach this book is to try to read it like it's the Bible, okay? It is simple notes from an incredible mind. that's the way to take it, and that's the way to approach it. That's how I say it. I've also personally been reading The Creative Act, A Way of Being by music producer Rick Rubin, which has been fantastic. I really recommend it. It's mainly marketed again toward, like, you know, creatives. Kind of works for me, but whatever it is that you're passionate about, there will be experts in that field. Go search for them. As for other stuff that's not just books, I've personally really liked hearing from a couple guys. Yanis Varoufakis has been really interesting, hearing a lot of his thoughts on where we are economically, as well as just culturally. Philosopher John Gray has some really great talks online and several books out. I haven't read any of his books, but I have liked a lot of the stuff he says, so give him a look. I also highly recommend, and it is weird to recommend a Canadian at the end of this in a video about American men, I really recommend Art Chad's video, How to Stop Hating the Left, which is one of my top recommendations that I just give to guys if you just want to just start the process of just letting go and moving away from, you know, away from knowing the world as a thing that is oppressing you and approaching the world as something that you can strive in, something you can, I guess it's just good for interacting with the world. Go watch the video. It'll be linked in the comments. Anyway, sorry, one sec. Anyway, hope you guys have enjoyed the video. I hope this has been helpful in some way, and I will see you in the next one.